And if we are walking the spiritual path, if we are walking the path of our own evolution, and we are holding that to the highest degree, doesn't mean that we're going to show up perfectly all the time. Lord knows, y'all, I do not show up perfectly in my life. I have times when I'm triggered. I have times where I'm angry. I have times where I just want the other person to fucking learn, okay? Can't they just get it? And I recognize that that isn't what sets me free. We're back, baby, with a brand new season of the It's Fucking Spiritual podcast. Join us each week as we have unfiltered conversations about how to transform your life. Our mission is to usher in a new era of spirituality where you don't have to be all love and light to live a life of alignment. Here, we honor all of it, the profound and the profane, the magic and the messy, and all things that make you human. So let's discuss the truth behind transformation and be unapologetic in our evolution. From manifestation to money, embodiment to energy, and all taboo topics, nothing is going to be off limits. Are you ready to live a life that feels just as good as it looks? Let's get fucking spiritual. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the It's Fucking Spiritual podcast. Another solo, short and sweet episode for you today. And I was feeling into what I wanted to do this podcast about. And it's something that has come up in my life recently. And so I thought maybe it would be helpful for you. And that is all about how do we forgive? How do we forgive when we feel that somebody has wronged us? How do we forgive when we are angry at a situation? How do we forgive ourselves for things that we haven't shown up for, or ways that maybe we have operated or acted in the past that didn't feel like they were in our highest light? I recently had a scenario in my life that was super challenging with somebody who I was very close with and had to go through my own process of forgiveness. Because the thing is, even though I practice this stuff, even though I, talk about it, and even though I make it a point to practice these principles, that's the thing. It's a practice. And I think that sometimes people think that if we forgive, then we are letting the other person off the hook. Or if we forgive ourselves, then that means that we're just going to be very laissez-faire and oh, it's fine. And so we can be really hard on ourselves, right? And for me, I've found that that's not actually the case. And yet, forgiveness can be really challenging when we feel like the circumstance is tough and hard. And so I just wanted to feel into this today. And if you have somebody that you need to forgive, if you have resentments or judgments that you're holding against yourself or other people, maybe you can listen to these words and just let them wash over you. Let them land for you in your body and in your system. And my hope and prayer for you is that you can allow this message to just alleviate some of the resentment or anger or judgment that maybe you're holding in your body. It doesn't feel good. So here's the thing. Every single time that we hold on to judgment, that we hold on to anger, that we hold on to the resentment of another person or ourselves, we are saying that the circumstance is meant to be different. We are saying that that person is meant to be different. And maybe if you're listening to this and you're like, but they are, but you don't know, but they fucked up, but they are really XYZ. I know. I get it. I've gone through it myself. It can feel not fair. It can feel really challenging. It can feel really daunting. And it can be also really valid. Your feelings can be really valid, and holding on to it is not allowing you to be free. I was listening to an episode on forgiveness recently with Marianne Williamson, and she mentioned that when we hold on to things, anger, frustration, fear, anything against another person, and we have a desire to punish that other person, When we put somebody in prison, both the warden and the prisoner cannot leave. Meaning that you are putting yourself in a prison by wanting to punish somebody else. You are putting yourself in a prison by wanting to punish yourself for your past actions. When you're holding on to stories that something is not as it should be, you are poisoning yourself instead of the other person. And I know that we hear this, but I wanted to bring this on as a reminder to you because I don't think it's something that well, we can hear it over and over and over again. And it can always be a beautiful reminder because the thing is, our ego loves to protect us. Our ego loves to have stories about how we're right, how the other person's wrong, or how we're bad, how we're not good enough, how we'll never get there because we can't seem to get over XYZ. And either way, we're holding on to something that is not actual truth. Doesn't mean that the circumstance didn't happen. It doesn't mean that someone didn't wrong you. But when I say truth, I mean we're holding on to something that isn't really love. And if we are walking the spiritual path, if we are walking the path of our own evolution, and we are holding that to the highest degree, doesn't mean that we're going to show up perfectly all the time. Lord knows, y'all, I do not show up perfectly in my life. I have times when I'm triggered. I have times where I'm angry. I have times where I just want the other person to fucking learn, okay? Can't they just get it? And I recognize that that isn't what sets me free. So my invitation for you is that if you are thinking of a specific person or circumstance or scenario in your life, number one, what lesson can you learn from this? What story are you telling that is not allowing you to be free? What is the universe calling you into? What is it desiring for you to know? And taking that even a step further, where are your patterns coming out? It can be really confronting to look at this. And then how can you forgive yourself? When we're not forgiving another person, we're not forgiving a circumstance or scenario, or we're not forgiving God or the universe, right? Because we think that it's wronged us. It's something that we're also projecting out because we're not forgiving ourselves, because we're judging ourselves. So where are you judging yourself? Where are you holding on resentment to yourself? When we have resistance to what is, it creates suffering. So can you breathe into the discomfort? Instead of being in the story of how much they fucked up, right? Or how much this isn't fair and calling this friend and that friend and ruminating on it and talking about it, which I will say there's a time and place. When I had this happen with this person in my life, you best believe I called a friend or two and I talked about it, right? Because we need time to process and to let our ego and to let our anger rise and allow ourselves to meet it in a healthy way, right? And then can we feel where that is in our body? Can you feel where the anger and the resentment lives? And if we understand that anger and resentment are actually just band-aids for fear, because really the only two emotions are fear or love. So when we're coming from gripping, when we're coming from anger, when we're coming from control of wishing it to be a different way, we're creating poison in our system. And it doesn't mean it's not valid. And it doesn't mean it's not meant to be felt. We're not supposed to bypass it and then just come from love and right? It's not that. It doesn't mean that you don't set boundaries. It doesn't mean that you don't communicate your feelings. It doesn't mean that you don't communicate the impact that maybe somebody else has on you. Doesn't mean that you don't go a different direction and not have that person in your life if that feels true. However, it does mean that we can feel and process the emotion through our body and then come back to a place of where do I need to learn from this? What is this calling me into? How am I meant to rise into more of me, into more of my greatness? And how am I meant to return back to love? Because the thing is, whenever we're holding on to anger and resentment and we haven't forgiven someone, it creates a block in our own lives. We're actually punishing ourselves. And how do you show up when you're in anger and resentment, right? Typically, we show up in a way, or we can show up in a way that isn't our best self. You know what I'm talking about. You can probably think of those times where you're angry or you lashed out, or maybe you're angry at yourself and you beat yourself up, and then that causes you to self-sabotage, and then you don't actually do the thing that you need to do, or you fawn, or you people please. You don't show up in a way that's in your highest. But if you were to sit down and you were to imagine if everyone that I cared about and everyone that I looked up to was sitting in a movie theater right now, watching this moment on a screen play out in a movie, and I was the main character, what would allow every single person in that audience to cheer? What action do I have to take right now to be proud of myself in the way that I show up? And if you haven't shown up in a way that makes you feel proud, this is not an excuse to beat yourself up. Believe me, I've had many moments in my life where I have not shown up in a way that makes me proud. And it's an invitation to return back to love, to return back to forgiveness for yourself, and to choose again. I didn't know how long I wanted this episode to be. I just knew that I wanted to talk about this a little bit because I know that forgiveness is something that we all need to do in our lives. Either that's a small circumstance or a big circumstance. Knowing that forgiveness is the thing that sets you free. And you get to trust that energy has a way of it coming back to itself. You don't need to punish anybody else, right? We're all on this journey to learn our own lessons. And can you see the other person and or yourself, right? Can you see the other person and yourself in the eyes of innocence, in the eyes of a child, in the eyes of someone who is acting out with their specific set of patterns and programming because of their specific wounding? And can you bring love and compassion to that? Can you look at the lessons that you're meant to learn? And then can you show up in a way that is going to make you proud of yourself, as if everybody that you love is watching? Because ultimately, the universe is watching, and the energy that you put out is the energy that you will receive back. So how can you use this circumstance and lesson for growth? So with that, just wanted to give you this little nugget of wisdom today. I hope that it was helpful for you. I hope that it soothed some little rigid corners of your heart. And I hope that it allows you to release even just 1% more, maybe something that you're holding on to. So with that, I love you very much, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to the It's Fucking Spiritual podcast. I am so glad that you're here. And if this episode resonated with you, I invite you to share this with a friend that you feel needs to hear it. And if you are really feeling the love and support for this show, this podcast thrives off of your listens and your reviews. So I would love if you could leave us an honest review. We would love to hear your feedback, your thoughts, your questions, and it helps us get this podcast in the hands of more people and would mean so much to me to receive your support. So thank you.